can't stop comparing yourself. Here's why. Right now, without realizing it, you are measuring yourself against someone else. Maybe it was the friend who just got promoted. Maybe it was a stranger's vacation photos. Maybe it was someone in a coffee shop who looked more put together than you felt. You noticed, you compared, and then came that quiet, uncomfortable feeling you can never quite name. You think this is a personal flaw, something about your character, something you should be able to switch off. You can't, and the reason goes back further than you can possibly imagine. Your brain was not built for the world you live in. It was built for a world that vanished thousands of years ago. And in that world, comparison wasn't a bad habit. It was survival. Understanding this changes everything about how you see yourself. Let's go back, way back, 60,000 years ago. Your ancestors lived in small bands of roughly 150 people. This number isn't random. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford University spent years studying primate brains and social groups, and he discovered that the size of a primate's neocortex, the thinking part of the brain, directly predicts the size of the social group it can manage. For humans, that number lands right around 150. In a group that small, everyone knew everyone. There were no strangers. And in that world, your position within the group was not just a matter of pride. It was life and death. If you were low status in a band of early humans, you got less food. You got less protection. You had fewer mating opportunities. You were more likely to be abandoned when the group moved on. The stakes of where you ranked were total, absolute. So your brain evolved to track your position obsessively. It became a social comparison machine running 24 hours a day, and it has never stopped. Psychologist Leon Festinger first gave this a name in 1954. He called it social comparison theory. His research showed that humans have a fundamental drive to evaluate their own opinions, abilities, and worth, and that when objective measures aren't available, we automatically look at the people around us. We don't do this consciously. We do it the same way we breathe, without deciding to, without being able to stop. But here's where it gets more complicated. Not all comparisons work the same way. When you look at someone doing worse than you, someone who lost the job you still have, someone going through the relationship you just got out of, your brain produces a quiet, shameful little pulse of relief. Psychologists call this downward comparison. It makes you feel safer, more secure in your position. For a moment, you feel slightly more okay about being you. And when you look at someone doing better, the promotion, the house, the body, the life that looks more complete than yours, something else happens entirely. Upward comparison. Your brain registers this as a threat, not a metaphorical threat, an actual neurological threat signal. The same system that would have fired if a predator stepped out of the tall grass. Your cortisol rises. Your mood drops. Your sense of who you are wobbles slightly on its foundation. This is not weakness. This is ancient machinery operating exactly as it was designed. Researcher Sonja Lyubomirsky at the University of California, Riverside spent years studying happiness and discovered something that seems obvious in retrospect, but is almost impossible to live. Unhappy people compare upward more often, more automatically, and more intensely than happy people. They also have a harder time disengaging. When an upward comparison enters their mind, it sticks. It loops. It finds evidence to confirm itself. Happy people, by contrast, compare less frequently. And when they do, they tend to use upward comparisons differently. Not as a verdict on who they are, as information about where they might go. The same mechanism. Two completely different experiences. The difference is not the comparison itself. The difference is whether your brain is treating the comparison as a verdict or a direction. But here is the part that makes all of this genuinely strange. The comparisons you make now have almost nothing to do with the world your brain was built for. In your ancestral environment, the 150 people around you were a reasonably fair sample of what was possible for a human being living under your conditions. If someone in your band was stronger, they were genuinely stronger. If someone was a better hunter, they had genuinely worked for it. The comparisons were, in an uncomfortable way, honest. The gap between you and the best person you knew was a gap you could actually measure. A gap that told you something real. Now consider what your brain is doing today. You open an application on your phone, and in 30 seconds, you have compared yourself to a professional athlete, a billionaire entrepreneur, a model who has spent 3 hours on lighting and angles, a person whose curated best moments from the last year have been compressed into 9 squares of a grid. Your brain receives all of this as a real social environment. It cannot tell the difference. It treats these inputs the same way it would have treated looking across the campfire at the people who actually shared your life. The result is a social comparison machine running on data it was never built to process. It is trying to calculate your rank within a group of 8 billion people, a group that includes everyone who has ever appeared on a screen in front of you. It cannot do this. No brain can. And yet it will not stop trying, because stopping is not something it knows how to do. Psychologist Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia has written extensively about the gap between what he calls the adaptive unconscious, the part of your mind that runs most of your processing automatically, and your conscious awareness. The comparison engine lives almost entirely in the adaptive unconscious. By the time you notice you're feeling inadequate after scrolling through someone's photos, the comparison has already been made. The feeling is already there. You are receiving the output, not making the calculation. This is important because it means you cannot fight this tendency at the moment it happens. You cannot catch the comparison mid-air and redirect it with enough willpower. The machinery is too fast. The conscious mind is too slow. What you can change is the environment that feeds the machine. Here is what this looks like in practice. The band of 150 that your brain was built to track, you can choose, deliberately, who is in it. You can reduce the frequency with which strangers with selected, filtered, optimized versions of their lives are fed into a system that will treat them as genuine peers. This isn't avoidance. It isn't weakness. It is calibration. It is using the one thing you can actually control, where your attention goes, to give your ancient brain something more honest to work with. Because the comparison will happen. It is going to happen today, tomorrow, for the rest of your life. The question is not how to stop it. The question is whether you are going to let it run on signal or on noise. Your ancestors, sitting around a fire with the 150 people who actually knew them, compared themselves to people who could also see them. People who knew their actual circumstances, their genuine effort, their real constraints. The comparison was uncomfortable, but it was grounded. It had something to do with who they actually were. The next time you feel that quiet, familiar ache, that drop in the chest, that slight tilt in how you see yourself, try to remember what it actually is. It is not evidence about your worth. It is a 60,000-year-old survival system trying to do its job in a world it was never designed for. The mechanism is ancient. The pain is real. But the verdict it keeps delivering is aimed at someone who no longer exists, in a world that disappeared long before you were born. You felt it before you finished reading the first line of this, that small, nagging awareness of how you measure up. It was already there, and now you know exactly where it came from.